Wealth did not originate as an object. It began as an agreement shaped by movement. Long before currency gained form or value was measured in symbols, people learned that access mattered more than possession. What could be reached, protected, and exchanged determined survival and influence. This understanding emerged most clearly near water. Rivers and seas became early corridors of meaning where goods, ideas, and trust traveled together. Those who learned to read these corridors discovered a form of power that did not rely on force alone. The sea transformed distance from an obstacle into an opportunity. It allowed communities separated by vast lands to interact with surprising consistency. This interaction required courage, patience, and a tolerance for uncertainty. In that uncertainty, finance found its earliest shape. A shipment promised was a risk accepted. A return expected was a future imagined. Each voyage required belief in systems not yet proven. Over time those systems grew stronger because they were tested repeatedly by loss and recovery. Empires formed when leadership recognized that stability was more profitable than domination. The temptation to seize wealth outright often proved destructive. Wealth taken violently tended to disappear quickly. Wealth that moved freely under protection multiplied. The difference lay in understanding circulation. Ports succeeded because they welcomed passage rather than hoarding value. A harbor that encouraged movement became indispensable. A harbor that restricted it faded quietly. Trade demanded memory. Agreements made across water required records that could survive absence. Writing became an economic tool as much as a cultural one. Numbers developed meaning beyond counting. They became promises preserved. When a merchant trusted a distant partner, that trust rested on shared understanding rather than personal familiarity. This abstraction allowed finance to grow beyond local bonds. It also required restraint. Without consistency, trust dissolved. The sea taught this lesson relentlessly. A single storm could erase years of effort. Preparation mattered more than ambition. Ships overloaded for profit were more likely to sink. Those who accepted moderate gains survived longer. This logic shaped early insurance practices. Loss was no longer viewed as failure but as a factor to be anticipated. Communities that shared risk endured volatility better than those that isolated it. Power along the coastlines developed differently from power inland. Inland authority relied on land ownership and immediate control. Maritime authority depended on timing and access. Control of narrow passages could influence entire regions. A single strait could determine which cultures interacted and which remained isolated. This influence did not require constant presence. It required reliability. Ships needed to know which waters were safe. As routes expanded, finance grew quieter but deeper. It became less visible than armies yet more decisive. Markets adjusted to seasons, winds, and political signals. A rumor could redirect trade faster than any decree. Those who listened carefully gained advantage. Those who acted rigidly lost relevance. Flexibility became a form of intelligence. Empires that endured learned to tax gently. Excessive extraction discouraged trade. Predictable rules encouraged participation. The most successful systems balanced authority with autonomy. Merchants were allowed freedom within boundaries. In return they contributed stability. This balance was fragile and required constant adjustment. When broken, alternatives emerged naturally. Smuggling did not arise from rebellion alone. It often emerged as a response to restriction. When official channels became unreliable or costly, informal ones replaced them. Finance followed the path of least resistance. This behavior was not moral or immoral. It was adaptive. Systems that recognized this tendency adjusted policies rather than increasing punishment. The sea remained indifferent throughout these changes. It rewarded skill and punished neglect. It offered opportunity without promise. This neutrality influenced economic thought. Value was no longer tied to moral deserving alone but to competence and timing. Those who navigated well prospered. Those who ignored reality struggled regardless of intention. Over centuries technology altered scale but not principle. Larger ships expanded reach. Faster communication reduced uncertainty. Yet trust remained central. Speed increased consequences. Errors traveled faster. Markets became more sensitive. Stability grew more valuable even as volatility increased. Modern finance still reflects its maritime origins. Capital flows resemble currents. They respond to pressure and opportunity. When one region becomes unstable, value shifts elsewhere. This movement is rarely emotional. It follows patterns shaped by confidence and expectation. Attempts to halt it often create unintended effects. Institutions that protect movement attract influence. Those that restrict it isolate themselves. Regulation succeeds when it guides rather than blocks. Predictability remains more important than generosity. Investors prefer modest, consistent returns over dramatic, unreliable ones. This preference mirrors ancient lessons learned at sea. Empires fall when they confuse control with ownership. Ownership without movement stagnates. Wealth locked away loses relevance. Innovation arises where exchange continues. Cultural vitality follows economic circulation. Isolation breeds rigidity. Interaction fosters adaptation. History offers repeated examples of dominant powers declining after severing their own roots. Fear replaces openness. Suspicion replaces trust. Trade contracts. Currency weakens. Alternatives grow quietly until they dominate. This pattern is not dramatic but gradual. Decline often appears invisible until it becomes irreversible. The sea remains a metaphor because it remains unchanged. It adapts without intention. It shapes behavior through consequence rather than command. Finance learned from this. Successful systems respond to reality rather than insisting upon ideology. They evolve through feedback. In the present era, digital routes have replaced many physical ones. Yet the logic persists. Data flows mirror trade winds. Platforms function as ports. Trust remains the currency beneath all others. Without it, no system endures. The most resilient structures encourage participation while maintaining clarity. Rules are enforced consistently. Exceptions are rare. Transparency builds confidence. Secrecy erodes it. These truths are ancient yet repeatedly forgotten. Education in finance often focuses on technique while neglecting philosophy. Yet understanding flow matters more than mastering tools. Tools change. Principles endure. Those who grasp circulation anticipate shifts before they occur. Empires once invested heavily in navigation. Today navigation takes new forms. Forecasting models attempt to replace intuition. Yet uncertainty remains. Complete control is impossible. Acceptance of risk is still required. The sea teaches humility. Finance mirrors this lesson. Overconfidence invites collapse. Moderation invites longevity. Systems that survive understand limits. They plan for disruption rather than denying it. In the end, wealth is relational. It exists between people, systems, and expectations. It cannot be isolated permanently. It must move or lose meaning. This truth has guided traders, rulers, and thinkers across centuries. Empires that aligned with this truth shaped eras. Those that resisted it vanished. The sea did not change. Only understanding did. And still today, beneath algorithms and infrastructure, lies the same quiet reality. Value moves toward reliability. Confidence flows toward consistency. Power belongs not to those who seize but to those who sustain. The lesson remains available to any who observe carefully. Movement creates meaning. Protection enables prosperity. And the future favors those who keep pathways open rather than walls high.